Okay, so question 3 is the structure question for the tiredness of Rosabelle. And the structure questions always look exactly the same on AQA English Language Paper 1. So you'll never get anything that looks very different to this. So the question is always going to be, you now need to think about the whole of the source the text is from, and then it will say what part of the story it's from. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? So question 3 is only about structure. So we are not looking at metaphors or similes or adjectives or anything like that, because these aren't things that are going to get us marks. If you have a look at the bullet points, they give you the biggest indication of what the examiner is looking for. So it says, you could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, any other structural features that interest you. So the main thing we need to talk about is how the text has developed from beginning to the middle to the end. So that's relatively simple to do, because basically it's just asking you, how has the plot changed? How has the plot developed? Now, then there are a few other structural features that I will go through as well that are sort of more advanced, but we're going to start on the basics, okay? So we'll lead you through the basics. So the first thing to think about is the fact that it starts in a very negative way. So when I'm writing and I want to use keywords like begin, develop, progress, yeah, those are the words that are going to get me marks. So I want to talk about the fact that it starts off in a very negative way. So at the corner of Oxford Circus, Rosabelle bought a bunch of violets. She hadn't eaten very much. She clearly wants beautiful things, but she can't afford them. So we start off in a very negative way, and that's what the writer is doing. They start off on how negative Rosabelle's life is, as she can't afford food. So again, I'm just summarising things here, right? I'm just summarising. I'm not actually using any quotations. I'm just going to summarise. They start off in a negative way in the fact that Rosabelle can't actually afford food. And then in the next paragraph, it goes on to develop. So again, I'm using that word develop. In the next part of the story, it goes on to develop the idea that Rosabelle was finding her journey incredibly unpleasant. She was finding it difficult to be on the bus. She found it quite stifling. She found it unpleasant. She found it uncomfortable. This development, so again, I'm linking it back to the reader now. This development then creates a sense of sympathy, because the reader feels sorry for Rosabelle as she seems to have sort of one bad thing happening after another. You know, she's having an unpleasant journey. She can't afford food. The text then develops to what has happened earlier on in the day. Okay, so I can keep, so the middle of the text is about what happened earlier on in the day. Now, this is where I'll go into sort of the more sort of developed subject terminology here, and that's the fact that this is told in flashback. So talking about whether it's done in past, present, or past or present tense is a good one. And also talking about, you know, so you're just basically talking about the time period, and also using words like flashback, if there is a flashback. So a flashback is where we are told a story that happened earlier, so something before our story started. So that's what we're being told here. It's being told in flashback about the young girl who comes into the store. So I'm still going through this. The young girl, when she comes into the store, clearly has a very advantaged life, which contrasts, and again, I'm using contrast because I'm talking about how the text is structured, which contrasts Rosabelle's life at the beginning of the text. We learn about the situation develops until Rosabelle actually finds it quite difficult to be in the situation because the girl is really hard to please. It's really hard to find what the girl needs. Then, towards the end of the extract, we see Rosabelle getting quite upset and quite jealous of this girl, which again creates sympathy because the girl leaves with a hat that Rosabelle tried on and looked very, very nice in. So it then becomes again something that we feel quite a lot of sympathy for Rosabelle with. Okay, so that's a simple way to look at it. Okay, a very simple way. Now, you might then also say things like, and the only thing I've really introduced to you that's more developed is flashback. So you could also look at things like the narrative perspective, like why put it in third person narration? So if you want to really impress me with your question 3, that's what you might look at. Why is it third person? Why is Rosabelle not telling this story herself? Okay, what does that do to the reader? What's the effect of that? Other things that you might look at would be things like the focus. So who do we focus on at different points in the text? Why do you think there's so much focus on the girl in the middle of the text, the girl that's not Rosabelle? Why do you think that there's that Harry is used as a character? Structurally, what does Harry do as well? So you might also think about that. These are all things that you can add in to your question 3. And if you're unsure about your question 3, then stick to what you know. Stick to what was the focus, how did the focus change, how did the focus develop? Stick to what you know. Don't go off on talking about similes or metaphors or anything like that, because your examiner is not looking for that. They're looking for things like shift of focus. Our focus shifts from Rosabelle to the girl. Our focus shifts from the girl to Harry, etc. That's what we're looking for as examiners. We're not looking for you to say similes, metaphors, adjectives, nothing like that. That was question 2. This is question 3, and question 3 is very different, okay? So that should make the structural question a bit easier as well. So I am posting this all for you to see.